Passion Harvest. Hello, passionate listeners and watchers. Welcome to Passion Harvest. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are in the world. I am Louisa, your host, International Passion Ambassador. I'm so honored and excited about my guest today, Dr. Christine Northrup. And if you don't know who she is, Dr. Christine Northrup is a visionary pioneer in women's health and teaches women to thrive at every stage of their life. Internationally known for her empowering approach, Dr. Northrup embraces medicine that acknowledges the unity of mind, body, emotions, and spirit, and teaches women to create health by tuning into their inner wisdom. Dr. Northrup is a board-certified OBGYN with more than 30 years of clinical experience, former assistant clinical professor of OBGYN at the University of Vermont College of Medicine, and three-time New York best-selling author of Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, the Wisdom of Menopause, and Goddesses Never Age. In 2013, Reader's Digest named Dr. Northrup one of the 100 most trusted people in America. In 2016, she was named one of Oprah Winfrey's Super Soul 100, a group of leaders who are using their voice and talent to awaken humanity. And in 2020, she was included in the Watkins Spiritual 100, a list of living people that make a unique and spiritual contribution on a global scale. As a business owner, physician, former surgeon, mother, writer, speaker, and according to Miriam Ava, PhD, a rebel, rock star, and authority on what can go right with the female body, Dr. Northrup acknowledges our individual and collective capacity for growth, freedom, joy, and abundance. Dr. Northrup has also hosted 8 highly successful public television specials, and her work has been featured on the Oprah Winfrey Show, The Today Show, NBC Nightly News, The View, Rachel Ray, Good Morning America 2020, and The Dr. Oz Show, among many others. This is her story and this is her passion. Dr. Christine Northrup, welcome to Passion Harvest. I'm so honored to have you on the show today.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here. Yes.
You're such a wealth of information on so many subjects, but I think what is quite relevant potentially is to talk about what's happening in the world right now. And with your wealth of information, I'd love you to share that with our audience if you feel comfortable doing that.
Yes, I would love to. You know, starting in March 21st, I believe it was, the equinox, is when we first learned that there was this thing called COVID-19. Yeah. And, you know, and then we all were told, okay, it'll just take 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and oh, we're in this together, and everyone did their part. And so think about it. That was March. Wow. Here we are in November. And what's interesting is the World Health Organization downgraded this coronavirus to no more than a severe flu in March, and in the UK also on the official websites. And yet it was later that we started to be told we needed social distancing, we needed masks. In the beginning, people were told use hand sanitizers and, you know, wipe down surfaces and so on. And what I noticed right away in March is that there were some intrepid physicians who would post things on vitamin D and vitamin C. And then Dr. Zelenko of the Jewish community in Brooklyn had a protocol that he was using with virtually 100% success rate. So remember, March was the time when we're seeing all this incredible news, like the ICUs are full, they're stacking up bodies. And I had friends in New York at that time. And I would say, go over to that hospital or go into Central Park, tell me what's going on. And only one of my brother's friends could corroborate anything that was actually going on. You remember that they had the 2 Navy ships, the Comfort and the Mercy, that were in the harbor in New York. And they had little tents set up in Central Park. And this was all for the overflow. And right about that time, again, some very, very courageous nurses came out weeping on YouTube saying, they're killing my patients. And Dr. Sales, I think it was, Eric Sales. I remember this very well because when you've been in medicine as long as I have, there's a sense that you get about who is a really good doctor, a real solid doctor who knows the science, but also has good clinical intuition. So I remember seeing him speaking live from the intensive care unit, saying, something isn't right here. This is not like a flu. It's not like anything I've ever seen. This is more like high altitude pulmonary edema, HAP. And these people should not be put on ventilators. They come in, they're panicked from oxygen starvation. They can't breathe. They just need oxygen. And we're finding when we put them on a ventilator, we never get them off because the ventilator pressure is too high for the lung tissue and they just don't get off. Well, that video was censored immediately. Now, here's the thing. One of the most beautiful things about the way medicine should be and the way academia should be is that you share what you're learning with others so that everybody ramps up their ability to help and heal at the same time. And much of it, by the way, is based on, I tried this and it worked. Why don't you try it? I've been in medicine long before we had this evidence-based thing. And there's a lot of erroneous stuff about evidence-based. You're never going to find evidence if you don't try some new things. So anyway, so I began to notice there was this censorship, which right now, as you and I speak, is worse than ever, worse than ever. And I noticed that I came to the point where I thought, okay, the more truthful it is, the faster it's getting taken down. I mean, when a Facebook fact checker says, this doesn't meet our community standards, and it comes from a world-renowned doctor, like I'll give you an example. Dr. Blaylock, I think it's Andrew Blaylock, is a world-renowned neurosurgeon. And early on this spring, he posted a studies from his career on the efficacy of masks. And it didn't meet the standards at all. What was interesting is you couldn't even post it on social media. I mean, they wouldn't even allow you to post it, or if you did, it was there for 2 seconds and taken down. So now, let me say, as a former president of the American Holistic Medical Association, censorship of holistic treatments is nothing new. So let me take your viewers back to the 1920s. And that's when John D. Rockefeller of Standard Oil put forth the Flexner Report. And the Flexner Report was a report that named conventional pharmaceutical-based, petroleum-based pharmaceuticals as the gold standard. And that report systematically closed the homeopathic medical schools, the naturopathic medical schools, anything that was based with herbology or anything of that nature got named quackery. And just like the CIA invented the word conspiracy theory, the Flexner Report invented the word quack. And so very highly paid doctors went out and exposed all the natural medical schools. And then even there was enormous influence in the scientific literature. And so anything that was not patentable, because remember, a natural substance cannot be patented.
Right.
Like with one of the things that I championed way back in the 90s were bioidentical hormones for women. Like if you needed hormones, you wanted to take the kind of hormones that your own ovaries produce. That bioidentical means exactly the same thing. It might be made in a lab, but the shape and the whole thing is exactly the same. Well, here's the issue. You cannot patent a naturally occurring substance. So you can't patent herbs to make all this money on them. You can't patent a naturally occurring hormone like natural progesterone that has helped so many people. But they did get around to patenting the delivery system for some of these natural hormones. So I saw that as a big leap forward, like the Climera patch and the Vivel dot, and they might have different names in Australia, but these are just 17 beta estradiol, natural progesterone, and the body, of course, responds to something that it recognizes. We have in women's medicine, it's rife with all these foreign substances that have never been seen on the planet. So a laboratory will make something like medroxyprogesterone acetate, Provera, and use that as a progesterone, but it's not anywhere near the same in the body. And way back in 94, when the very first edition of Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom came out, I wrote in there this huge women's health initiative that Wyeth A. Hurst at the time was funding, along with the United States government, to determine whether or not hormones were absolutely necessary to prevent heart attacks. I said in the book, first edition, they are using the wrong hormone at the same dose for everyone. The very information that they are trying to find, they're not going to find, because you need to individualize the dose, and the hormones need to match exactly what's in the female body. Mm-hmm. And they use the same dose for everyone, Prempro, Premarin, and Provera. Premarin is made from the urine of pregnant horses. It's a bioidentical hormone if your native food is hay. And sure enough, in 2002, I happened to be on a whale watch in Cape Cod Bay, and I get called from the Wall Street Journal saying they have stopped the Women's Health Initiative. They have halted it because too many women were getting heart attacks and strokes because they were using something foreign to the female body. Now, back then, what they were trying to do was prove that every woman needed to be on estrogen to prevent heart attacks, the number one killer of women. I mean, it's like 10 times more common than breast cancer. Everyone's worried about breast cancer, but the heart disease
doesn't have the publicity, yes.
Yeah, it's just not the same. And so lo and behold, that was stopped. And everyone got terrified of their hormones, and many women went off cold turkey. And if we had just approached the whole thing in a far more holistic way, it would have caused a lot fewer problems. And so ever since then, 2002, you watch them scramble to come back with trying to get everybody on hormones again, because our medical system, I don't know about Australia, but in the United States, it is 100% run by big pharma now more than ever. Now let's go to current times. So yes. We have this drug called hydroxychloroquine, which has been used for 60 years to prevent malaria, also for a variety of other illnesses, sometimes certain types of arthritis. And it's off-label, it's cheap. The cost of a course of it is about $12 US or was. And way back, I think it was in March, April, President Trump started to talk about hydroxychloroquine. And you would have thought that he was suggesting that everyone take cyanide. And my ears pricked up. I'm really not political at all, but I thought, well, wait a minute. This is an off-label use of a drug that's been around forever. And Dr. Salenko in Brooklyn is saying that this is what it is actually, it's a zinc ionophore. It gets zinc into the virus and inactivates it. The same way, by the way, quercetin does the same thing. And that's
the COVID virus.
Yeah, the COVID virus, right. And just gets it in there and it stops it. And it was part of Zelenko's protocol and the protocol from a bunch of other doctors. But I have an acupuncturist friend in Brooklyn, and she said, well, I was very interested in that drug and maybe using that. And she said, but my liberal friends won't even talk to me about it. And I thought, what? This makes no sense. This is not rational thought. If this works, why don't we use it? Then, so lo and behold, they do a study, which they published in Lancet, and found out that one of the guys behind the study was a scam artist. It was a study designed to fail. They used lethal doses of this stuff, like a
Gosh.
1,000 milligrams, a loading dose, 2,000 milligrams. There, as with all drugs, there's a therapeutic range, and not enough is not therapeutic, and too much can be deadly. So this article came out to great acclaim, mainstream media. Hydroxychloroquine is deadly. And then, of course, they found out that the study was completely invalid. And I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, this doesn't make any sense. But I'm also remembering my entire career. Anyone who had a natural approach to cancer or pretty much anything else was considered a quack. So here we have this incredibly cheap drug. And now my physician friends are unable to prescribe it to their patients unless they use a diagnosis like arthritis or malaria.
Right.
A pharmacist will not distribute this drug if you say prevention or treatment of COVID-19. This makes no sense.
It doesn't. The world doesn't make sense at the moment.
No, it doesn't make sense. So that's why, for anyone watching your show, I would like to remind them that we humans can be like a dowsing rod. This body can feel truth. This body can know when we're being lied to. Let me tell you what just happened to me, and it was very strange.
Yeah.
So on Monday, I testified against a flu vaccine mandate for all healthcare workers in our state. And this was a hearing, a public hearing via Zoom, which is where the world, God forbid we should touch each other. And
that's another thing, the social distancing that we can talk about in a minute.
Yes, indeed. And it goes with the Biderman's rules of, it's like torture. It's Amnesty International came out with how you torture a population, and what has been happening to us with social distancing, masks, all of that has been actual torture. What do you do to a prisoner when you really want to make them suffer? Solitary isolation. Humans are not designed for that. But anyhow, so I testify, and I just decided, I had a bunch of doctor friends, and we divided up the points that we wanted to make. And the bottom line is that it needs to be, it's a basic human right to determine what gets injected into your body. Mm-hmm. My particular thing was the fact that the flu vaccine in the United States is going on at least $900 million in payouts for vaccine injury. And people just need to know about that. They can go ahead and take it, but they should know about that. Mm-hmm. And also the fact that within the 2 weeks of a flu shot, you increase your risk of every other respiratory virus illness by a factor of 5, and including COVID. And nobody knows this, even though it's there in the mainstream medical literature, it's right there. But it's almost like it gets shouted down, because at this point, get your flu vaccine. And somewhere in the middle of all this, the state of Massachusetts mandated flu vaccines for everyone 6 months and over. If they were in daycare, if they were in nursery school, if they were in schools. And RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., brought a lawsuit to the University of California because they were going to mandate the flu vaccine. Now, so far, they haven't done it, but the judge in the case absolutely believes the mainstream narrative that you having the flu vaccine makes you not infectious, so it protects others, but that's never, ever, ever been proved. In fact, there's data that for 2 to 4 weeks after having the flu vaccine, you are contagious. You can spread that virus to others. And then there's the whole discussion about, is a virus ever even alive? And are we barking up the wrong tree? And that's the Louis Pasteur versus Antoine Beauchamp discussion put forth so poetically and eloquently by Dr. Zach Bush. But I digress. So anyhow, I testify that this is bad public health policy, and I give all the reasons why it's not a good idea. That night, in our local newspaper and on television, it uses my name to say, I'm for this mandate and vaccines are very important.
Gosh.
Where they got that, I do not know. But then I heard about it and I reached out to the editor. And he said, oh, fine, I'll just remove your quote. And I said, no, that's not good enough. Journalistic integrity must involve you publicly retracting it and admitting that you made a mistake. But using my name to promote that agenda makes absolutely no sense, given that in our little area of the Portland, Maine area, they had just done a hatchet job on me on a little, rag that you get at the checkout of the grocery store, calling me Dr. No, and my ideas are evil and they're putting people at risk and all of that stuff. So it didn't make sense. And they did do the retraction and published it. But this is what I want people to know. If your only information comes from the mainstream media, you are not being adequately informed. And the same goes, by the way, for my medical literature. I've never seen anything so biased. Now, I always knew it was biased. And by the way, in my profession, all of the textbooks on, let's say, gynecologic endocrinology and all of that, you're gifted the textbooks. And, on the back, you will see the name of the drug company that's paying for your textbook.
Yes.
Or, there's all these drug lunches where these people, by the way, the drug companies in the past have hired a lot of Texas cheerleaders, very good looking, ebullient, optimistic people. So they come in to a beleaguered doctor's office, offer you great chocolate, beautiful food, take you out to lunch. And so what happens, it's a very effective technique. I remember the names of 2 drug reps that I saw over and over for my whole career when I was seeing patients. I loved them. So we just need to understand there's undue influence in our daily health and in our information from big pharma and from special interests that do not have your optimal health as their number one priority. It's more they have control of you and selling you drugs for the rest of your life. And I remember in the US when they had that political slogan, prescription drugs for seniors. You need your prescription drugs, as though you suddenly turned 65 and you need all these prescription drugs. I mean, my mother is 95. She's never been on a prescription drug. And I'm sure you can name me many people who are not. But the average person in the United States after the age of 65 is on 6 prescription drugs.
Gosh.
And it's kind of death by prescription. We know that the 3rd leading cause of death in the United States is medical errors in hospitals and from doctors from appropriately prescribed medication. So I believe that what we're looking at here is a kind of a giant psychological wake-up call for people. Like, where does health come from? It comes from clean water. It comes from a healthy soil microbiome. It comes from a healthy microbiome in our own gut. It comes from organically grown food, enough sunlight. And that's where health comes from. That's how you grow healthy plants. So why is it that we're told the only way back to normal is vaccinating everybody with a virus that we now know has a 99.9% survival rate? Why is a vaccine the only way to get back to normal? And I'll tell you, having testified against mandatory vaccines for children in our state, I can tell you that I'm going to just call it I don't like to use the term brainwashing, but I would say the sort of mass hypnosis about vaccines began with this measles outbreak in Disney World. And suddenly measles is back and it's dangerous. And the truth of the matter is measles is not dangerous in the vast majority of cases. I had it. all the baby
I've had it
boomers.
too.
Yeah, you've had it, and we recovered. And if a child is malnourished and doesn't have enough vitamin A and vitamin D, then they can be in real trouble with measles. But it confers immunity against many forms of cancer down the road. It's interesting, chickenpox.
I've had that too.
Right, when they introduced the chickenpox vaccine, suddenly little kids were getting shingles. They changed the germ. They changed the chickenpox thing, so that suddenly I used to see shingles only in, immunocompromised 85-year-olds. Suddenly we're seeing it in 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, because nature always finds a way. And when you squash it here, it blooms over here. So we need to work with the intelligence of life, of nature, of the earth. And I think that's where we're being led here. I think we're at the last stand of a worldview that is obsolete.
I love your approach as well. You're asking everyone basically to make up their own mind and educate themselves and get curious on what is happening and what are the real figures. And I would also say to people, I'd like to put a few links in the show notes just to educate themselves if they're interested to find out more. You mentioned journalistic integrity. I don't know if there is any journalistic integrity in the world anymore, but that's again for people to make their own decisions.
That's right. There are some that I follow. My platform is informed consent and medical freedom. So I follow Jeremy Hammond is one. I follow the website of RFK Jr., Children's Health Defense, Sherry Tenpenny's Vaxter.com, also the NVIC, National Vaccine Information Center. And I'm on I work with a group of scientists and activists on MAMM.org, Millions Against Medical Mandates.org. And we get together and put out little sound bites of solid information so that people can again be educated, because you're not going to be educated from the mainstream and from social media unless you look. So for instance, I no longer use Google as a search engine. Google is owned by a pharmaceutical company called Alphabet Company. And they started out wonderfully. And now, if you put in, let's say you put in the word vaccine, what will come up is all of the mainstream vaccines are the most wonderful thing that ever happened to humanity. They're safe and effective, when in fact, the number of adverse reactions is closer to about 1 in 38. We also, if we just look at the number of children with autism, when I was in medical school, it was 1 in 4,000. It's 1 in about 40 now. Yeah. And I have followed the career of my colleague, Andy Wakefield, and all he was doing is noticing that children who'd had the MMR vaccine were showing gastroenterologic, problems with their gut. And so he just asked other parents to get together. And then suddenly a very organized campaign to discredit him began, and his career was over. And since that time, he's done some documentary films. The latest is called The Act, 1986. And that's available through Seventh Chakra Films. And what he points out there is that in 1986, the United States Congress gave pharmaceutical companies carte blanche to produce anything they wanted with no liability whatsoever. And we're also currently under the PrEP Act, which was passed by, I think, George W. Bush in 2005, giving the ability of the state to give whatever vaccine they wanted with, again, no liability whatsoever. So if you die, you die. If you're maimed, you're maimed. So if we look at the current COVID trials, I think there are 150 different companies fast tracking a COVID vaccine. Mm-hmm. And the one that's out right now is from Pfizer.
So there is a vaccine currently available or in
Well, I
trial?
don't think anyone's gotten it, but they've done the clinical trials. So we
Mhm.
have a lot of people who've been in the clinical trials. And so far, one person has died, a young physician in Brazil. Someone has gotten transverse myelitis, which is essentially polio. It's paralysis. And in the Moderna trials, Moderna doesn't have the vaccine out yet. And by the way, they've never produced a vaccine ever.
Mhm.
And in that group, the high dose people, 100% of them got very ill. And in the low dose, about 60% of them got very ill. And so, and here's the thing, it's an mRNA vaccine. I do know with the Pfizer product, the mRNA comes from China. I also know that it contains the lung fibroblasts of a 14-week male fetus, but they don't call it on the package insert the lung fibroblast of a 14-week
Yes.
male fetus. They don't call it that. It's got another name, so I had to look that up, but that's what that name means, and I don't have the name at my fingertips. So what I would say to everybody, oh, and also, the mRNA vaccines that they've tried in the past work by what's called transfection. They're not like a bacterial vaccine. They work differently. This one is directed against one of the spike proteins of the coronavirus. And so you're getting your body to produce an antibody to that spike protein. And so hopefully, you will not get you won't get a serious illness from COVID. The problem is that these vaccines create two kinds of antibodies. There's one type and another type, and I can't remember both types, but I will tell you,
Mhm.
it's like we knew early on that some people who had recovered from COVID never did get an antibody response. They never did because it was their bone marrow, the T cells from the lymphocytes in the bone marrow that were fighting off the illness, and they don't work with a humoral antibody. That's a cellular antibody. It's called the myeloid system. Well, here's what's happened in animals that have gotten a transfection with an mRNA vaccine. At first, it looked like they were doing great.
Mm.
But then when they came into contact with the germ later, their bodies mounted this huge autoimmune response, and they got very, very sick. I think, in fact, 100% of the ferrets died with this type of vaccine. So we haven't seen it in a long time. And I work with a group in Newark, New Jersey, the Urban Global Health Alliance. And as you probably know, we're looking at the public health policy is to give Black people and Indigenous people the vaccine first, since they seem to be most at risk. And after doing all the research, the Newark people are saying to the public health officials, we remember Tuskegee, so why don't you take it first? And as for those who don't know what Tuskegee is, it was a 40-year experiment on Black people in the United States, giving them syphilis and just watching to see what happened.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then we have all these Native women who have just disappeared in Canada and the United States. There's been genocide of our Indigenous people forever, from the doctrine of discovery, way back from the papal whatever, where the Pope says, go and do whatever you want to whoever you want if you are of our nation. And that's also where we are. There's an awful lot that's happened, the macro level.
Yep.
There's an awful lot that's happened that does need to be redressed. There have been systems like the fiat banking system, the Federal Reserve in the US, set up to enslave the people. I mean, the creature from Jekyll Island talks about that, where a bunch of wealthy guys like J.P. Morgan, under cover of darkness and under pseudonyms, went down to Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia and created the Federal Reserve. Here's the Federal Reserve, like 5 families own it. It's a private bank, and they just print money and then charge you interest on it. Pretty good business model, isn't it? Just print whatever money you want and then charge people interest on it. Well, that's the kind of economy that we've also had And it's interesting to me that that system, which I've known about, and the medical system, which I know a lot about, and the media system, and also the education system. We now have children, 2 days a week on a screen with no human interaction with the teacher. And we know from the mirror neurons within us that we learn by watching other humans. I've also learned that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has introduced the curricula of all these different programs that all the schools are using. And those computer screens can and do collect biometric data on all those children. So I would ask the question, who gets to use that? What does it go for? And the other question I ask is, why is it safe for me to go to Walmart, but it's not safe for me to go to a locally owned business? Why is that?
Mm.
Yeah. So those are some of the questions that I would say to people. And why are liquor stores open? And why can you get an abortion, but you can't go to your local restaurants? I mean, here in our area, about our little town of Portland, Maine, was known for being a foodie city. All these wonderful chefs came here. I think 60-70% of those restaurants are now closed permanently.
It's terrible. The amount of businesses that are closed, the amount of people that are suffering, the world's going into debt. And as you said, the Federal Reserve is printing money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in your very educated opinion, politics and finance and medicine is all being intermingled.
They are. To me, it feels like.
And why?
It's the death of the educational system, the medical system, the financial system. And here's what I see in the future. There's a great documentary.
I'm going to do a drum roll.
Yeah, right now on Netflix, and it's called Kiss the Ground.
Okay.
And it's narrated by Woody Harrelson, famous actor. And it's absolutely wonderful. And it's about regenerative agriculture. My friend Renette Senum, who's the former mayor of Nevada City, California, is running for governor in California on a platform of what do we need to do that protects 7 generations in the future. And there's a rise of indigenous consciousness now and the wisdom of the earth. And I believe that these control systems, these slavery systems that have been in place, think about the Crusades. I mean, the Pope just says, okay, go kill everybody in the Middle East. Who's, this is the sort of thing that I think is all falling down around us. The scales are falling from our eyes. So if someone's listening to this, chances are very good that they are not getting all their news on the mainstream media.
Yes.
In fact, the legacy media is falling away. I mean, who do I know who even watches NBC, CBS, or that PBS? They're all of these platforms and I did 8 highly successful public television programs, and, it was all over the US and Canada. And I loved the platform that I could bring my message to people in that way. Now, when you turn on public television in the US, you start with about 15 minutes of commercials from, big multinational global corporations. And I think that we need to be at the end of rule by disembodied corporations. These are not people. These are dead organizations. And the human spirit now, I call my little daily thing the Great Awakening, which is just based on astrology. And the astrology is that this is a big Pluto transit that humanity is going through. And Pluto rules the underworld and is also plutonium, great power. And the underworld is where all the oil and the water and the gems are,
Natural resources.
Natural resources. So we have to now, as humanity, as one globe, create a system that takes care of everybody, where we don't have the global elite flying in their private jets to Geneva, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum, or whatever they call themselves. And, where, who's this guy? Klaus, somebody or other, has written a book. It's called The Great Reset. And we get to determine where you live. We get to determine where you go. And it's all being rolled out on the backs of climate change and sustainable development. Yeah.
And safety right now.
Yeah, and you guys get to determine all of that. I mean, okay, so you're down there in Australia, and I just see that Qantas Airlines has said that there will be, you've got to be vaccinated with COVID to get on a plane. Or we've got these immunity passports. Really? For a vaccine, for a COVID with a 99.9% survival rate?
Yes.
What is that about?
Again, you said that survival rate. I don't think many people are aware of that.
Of course they're not. And by the way, if you Google that, or even if you use DuckDuckGo, Brave, or Opera as your search engine. Yeah. Don't use Google. It's completely, it's taken over. I mean, the censorship right now is beyond my comprehension. And I can tell you, natural remedies that I have been talking about and writing about for years have always been censored, but they've been censored in a way that was fairly benign. Oh, you're smarter than that. You went to medical school. You know that no herb can possibly do that. Here, take this drug. Here, take this injection. Like, you're a fool if you're not going along with standard medicine. It's like I just got an email today from a man who says, my wife watches you and she does not want to take that COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
And the gist of the letter is, and if she dies because of your advice, that's on your hands. So I just said to him, first of all, I would never tell anyone what to do, but it is my job. First, do no harm. It is my job as a physician, as a healer, as a light worker, basically, to tell you what I know. And then you decide. And by the way, I'm not going to shove it down your throat. I'm not going to mandate anything. I mean, when we get to the point where we have to mandate and force people to do this stuff, then you're talking about a mindset that I wrote about in a book called Dodging Energy Vampires, an empath's guide to evading relationships that drain you and restoring your health and freedom. And I didn't know when I wrote that book that this was about, individual gaslighting in a relationship, like if you're in a relationship with a sociopath or a narcissist or whatever, which is a huge problem. It's a huge problem. It's 1 in 5 people, and every family has one, and They drive everybody crazy. Well, little did I know that I would be talking about a global energy vampire that would be gaslighting all of humanity by telling you, you need to put a mask on a 2-year-old, when we have absolutely no data that children transmit this or even get sick.
Or even the masks,
Or
being
that they
used.
don't even do any good.
Yes, and you also mentioned the social distancing, which is just causing so much suffering for many, many, many people.
And how in the world, okay, the virus, whatever it is, generally travels 30 feet before landing somewhere. I mean, there are millions of viruses in the air. You think that this mask is going to protect you? It's like, it's been likened to trying to keep out mosquitoes with a chain link fence. It's absurd. But notice how many people really believe the narrative, and this is the same narrative that they used to pass the vaccine mandates. And it's this: you need to inject this into your child to protect my child. You need to wear a mask to protect me. We have street signs now up and down the turnpike. Wearing is caring.
Really?
Wearing is caring. That is pure bullshiggity. It's ridiculous. You want to go up to those things and blow them up with a grenade. It's like treating the entire population as though we're stupid and we need the public health department to tell us It's crazy because we also, of course, we have very different narratives coming out of Sweden. No lockdowns, no big spikes in death, no nothing. And South Dakota, you know. So those places, whoever is working there has enormous courage to not buckle to whatever this global agenda is.
Excellent terminology.
Yes. And so that's what I would say to people is find out what the global agenda is. Look up The Great Reset. I think that's a book out right now by Klaus, whoever it is, and the World Economic Forum out of Davos, Switzerland, because this is the plan. It was first rolled out as Agenda 21 with the United Nations. And then it was Agenda 2030. They've rolled it up now. They've, you know, so now it's 2025. Oh, we better push this hard right now because people are waking up. So we don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
But having been from the very beginning of this, I thought, oh, this is simple. You know, just take some quercetin, vitamin C, D, add a little bit of zinc. Nobody gets sick. And suddenly we're here in a global lockdown where, you know, in Liverpool, they were literally injecting children with barcodes with no parental notification. And there is a bill pending in Washington, D.C. that's currently on the desk of their mayor, Muriel Bowser, that will make it legal for 11-year-olds to consent to vaccinations without parental permission, and worse, that you don't need to write it down in the chart and you don't need to divulge it to the parent. Now, do you notice how dangerous that is? Because what if you come in and you get a vaccine for whatever it is and you have an adverse reaction? How are you even going to know what it is you're treating? We also know I was very against the Gardasil vaccine. In 2006, I was on the Oprah Winfrey show and someone said, what do you think about Gardasil? And I said, it's not a good idea. That was before girls were getting sterile and dying all over the planet. And they are mandating that to go to school in New York State and some other states.
Really?
And here's how they coerce the child. You don't want to get cancer, do you? Say that to an 11-year-old. You don't want to get cancer, do you? Oh, and your mother doesn't care. I guess she doesn't care if you get cancer. Don't worry, come back when you're 18. Undermining the parent-child bond. And that's also part of this agenda, is to undermine the family. Let's talk about crimes against humanity. Your mother's in a care home, and you not only haven't touched her, if you even go in there, you got to be in there with a guard who makes sure that you don't touch her. That's what's happening. I don't know if it's happening where you are. That's what's happening in the United States. And that is a crime against humanity, where you take your elderly people, you put them away in prisons and
isolate them. No touching.
Yeah, isolate them. Don't touch them. You can't talk to them. I mean, very few 85-year-olds are really facile with Zoom. It's not the same. It's not part of their generation. And why should it be? So, and then pregnant women are laboring with masks on, meeting their newborn with a mask on, when the child's first imprint of mother, of humanity, is that distance between the breast and the face. That's how you encode your mother's face. It's called NFOS, and babies look at you when they're nursing, or, you know, if it's a bottle, doesn't matter. It matters, but, you know, that's okay. Yeah. And to have a mask on, I mean, this is undermining what it means to be human. And if you look at the Singularity by Kurzweil and all of that, the agenda is, and they're very open about it, to combine our biology with AI, with artificial intelligence, and essentially to make us into cyborgs. So that's the agenda of the vaccine. And I, you know, and when I say this, you know, I feel like well, I better get out my tinfoil hat. But the problem is there's so much evidence if you just open your eyes. I would ask everybody to go to my colleague Joe Mercola's website, Mercola, M-E-R-C-O-L-A, Mercola.com, and just put in transhumanism. Just put in that word transhumanism. And what will come up is my colleague Carrie Madej, who talks about the various patents and the various immunity passports and microneedle arrays and transfection and ways that they have made genetically altered organisms, GMOs, and they're using the same technology with humans.
Well, there's going to be a lot of resources in the show notes for everyone that's listening.
Good.
It feels like and it's very true, and I love how you're educating people, but a bit of doom and gloom. What would you say to those people that currently now have not as yet read all the resources and are living in fear?
First thing they need to do is get out of fear. And the way you get out of fear is you absolutely must stop watching the news. You must stop watching the mainstream media because they are so clever at scaring you to death. They're so clever, and there are subliminal messages that come in through television and through your devices. I mean, I would get, what is that thing that Amazon has? I never talk to Siri, and I would not get that Alexa thing for any reason whatsoever. So stay away from, and at least give yourself a media holiday, like a long weekend, let's say. Ground yourself, stand on the earth. If you do that, it decreases cellular inflammation by 20% within 20 minutes. Hug a tree, and I'm not kidding. Don't make it a pine tree, though. That'll get sap on your clothes, and I've done that. Or walk on the beach if you have one near you. The earth herself has great intelligence. You can gaze at the sun right at sunset or right at sunrise with your eyes closed. Let this light come in. It's biologically active. And then breathe, because here's the thing. When you're watching the news, you will be in a sympathetic flight, fight, freeze, sympathetic place. And you cannot think, and you cannot reason, and you have no access to your wisdom. Fear is the lowest possible frequency that we are capable of, and you're powerless when you're in fear. They know that, and that's why it's this, I call what they're doing fear porn. It's just fear porn. It's like, is there ever going to be any relief? So you can see how they work it. You're scared to death. They have told you you can't go out, you can't do anything. Occasionally they throw you a bone. Oh,
or your own safety.
That's right, for your own safety.
Yeah, which is clever.
And now what are they? They're dangling an immunity passport and a COVID vaccine, and then we can go back to normal. Oh, please, folks, do not drink that Kool-Aid, because the agenda is to move you into cities so that humans can only be in certain areas. There will be no private property. They don't want you to own a vehicle, and they will determine who goes where. What I have told people for years is the Matrix is not a movie, it's a documentary. And so what I tell people is, the first thing you have to do is look at it. You have to look at it. Now, I will tell you, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Why? Because there's now a grid of people holding light as information all over the planet. We're having these global meditations where you'll get 1 million people meditating at the same time. That changes the Schumann resonance of the earth. The Schumann resonance is the frequency of the earth herself. After these meditations, the Schumann resonance will go from 7, let's say, to 12. The earth herself is a living being and is waking up. And so my colleagues, Lori Ladd and Jason Shurka, are running these global meditations, and like the next one will be 12-12, 12-12-2020, and then 1-1-2021, and like that. And when we participate in this way, our frequency becomes very high. The frequency of love, the frequency of compassion, and let me just say, the frequency of truth. is very high. And people who are aligned in truth are hundreds of times more powerful than those who are cowering in fear. If you're in fear, you have no ability to change anything. You'll do whatever they tell you, and that's what they're counting on. So when a bunch of us all over the planet stand up in sovereignty, I'm not having it. I am a free, natural-born human. This is a protected class. I do not consent. When enough of us do that, the critical mass is anywhere from 1% to 3%. Doesn't need to be everybody. 1% to 3%. The American Revolution was won with 3% of people agreeing. And Stephen Greer, who does the Disclosure Project with all of the extraterrestrial intelligence, points out that we can reach, what does he call it? It's when coherence. When you have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system in perfect alignment, that creates coherence. And only 1% of people need to be in that coherence to change everybody. And the way you can demonstrate that is you get a bunch of, just go on YouTube and put in metronomes, all right? So they started all these metronomes and they're all going at different, like that. And then after a certain amount of time, they're all doing this. And that's how it's going to be when those of us who are holding a very high frequency hold it long enough that the rest of them.
Like a tuning fork.
Like a tuning fork.
And the natural law of energy is to go to the higher frequency anyway.
Yes, and that's really true. And so as we stay high frequency and just maintain it and work on the ability to stay there through meditation, through standing and hugging a tree, through standing on the earth, through breathing through your nose. Breathing through the mouth is a stress response. It will just create more stress hormones. But breathing through the nose, doing yoga breathing, all of that will get you into this coherence. And then you're powerful. So you turn off the news. And let me also say, there's this thing called cognitive dissonance. And what's happening to so many people is they're waking up and they cannot believe that they've been lied to by their doctor, lied to by their government, lied to by trusted sources. For years,
power of authority.
The power of the white coat, trusted authorities. People have said to me for years, well, that's not FDA approved. It's like, yeah, or the NIH doesn't recommend that, or the CDC. Well, those are all captured agencies. The CDC in the United States owns, I don't know how many patents for vaccines. People think that it is a federal agency designed to have your health in mind. It is not. It is a vaccine company that gets royalties, and the people who work there get royalties. Anthony Fauci is worth bazillions from all the royalties he gets. I mean, little holistic practitioners are criticized for selling supplements in their offices. And yet our government officials are making millions on the side from their contacts. I mean, in the United States, people say they're going to become a representative or a senator for public service, and they all get out of there. First of all, they don't have to go by the same healthcare plans that everyone else has. They get their own. They get a lifetime pension. And because of insider information, they all leave there wealthy. It's unbelievable. I think those are the sorts of things we need to look at.
Yeah.
But remember the resonance. So I stay in enough high frequency, because then also reach out to those who are there at that high frequency. So I follow, for instance, Lori Ladd, and she channels the, Galactic Federation, whoever they are. It feels right to me, Magenta Pixie. You need to have some very high vibe sources of information in what would be called 5 dimensions instead of 3D. 3D is very, very dense right now. And Phil Good is another spiritual teacher I follow. And Phil says the reason that you won't see the sort of love and light spiritual teachers talk about the 3D is that you have to hold a very high frequency to even interact with the 3 dimensions, because it's just very dense. But so we are, as Lori Ladd said, we're alchemizing the darkness by feeling it. Our bodies are going through an ascension process now. We're getting lighter and lighter, but you have to feel it to heal it. And right now, it's as bad, I think, as it's ever going to get, because the
Let's hope so.
I hope so. Yeah, I really do hope so.
And it's more a feeling, not a doing, not an action necessarily. It's a state of mind. It's a state of well-being.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So take naps.
What a power of truth and beacon of light you are, Dr. Christine Northrup. It's been such an inspiration and insight, and I just think it's so empowering that you're obviously not pushing your point of view, but you're educating, asking people to educate themselves or just be curious. Yes. And I think that's fundamental for people to explore their own truth and what resonates with them.
Yeah, we want to do an invitation. It's just an invitation. If you're drawn here, then go here. And at your own timing, because the other thing we must do is we must give people the dignity of their own timeline. Yes. Yeah.
Gosh, I can't wait to re-listen to this. I've got so much food for thought, and it's so empowering for me as well. I've got goosebumps a few times as you were talking. So
beautiful.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for being on Passion Harvest. It's been, again, such an honor to have you on the show. And I want to thank you on behalf of humanity for being such a lighthouse in the world right now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye, Christine.
Bye.
If you like this episode, please do subscribe for weekly passionate, inspirational interviews.